We're going to go a little low tech today. Uh, yes, it is. So good to see all of you here today. I've been thinking about preaching today for several weeks and frankly terrified. Uh, it's been so long and I don't get to preach that much anymore. So, Bob said this morning it's like riding a bike. Well, I bought a bike a couple of years ago and I couldn't ride it. So, so that's not much help. Uh, well, thank you. I love you too. Uh, and I'm not preaching on Romans today. It's not their fault, it's my fault. I didn't let them know of the change. John said I could preach on whatever I wanted to. And so I didn't get the word out well enough on the change. I am preaching on power, the power of faith, the power of the cross, and that's what we'll be going through today. One of the dreams that companies have this day is to come up with a logo that just gets indelibly fixed in people's minds. A logo or a symbol or an expression that people will associate with a product that has kind of a heart appeal, so that when they see it, they think to themselves about that company and they want to buy whatever it is that company has to sell. Now, I want to demonstrate this for you in a couple of ways this morning. Uh, I'm going to draw a couple of those logos up here. Now, for those of you that know me, know that I'm very bad at drawing, and so I kind of want to lower the bar a little bit and ask you to turn to the nearest person around you and tell them he really is bad at drawing. Now, I mean that. Go ahead and tell him he really is bad, because as you're going to see, I am. Now I'm going to draw the first one here, hopefully. Now, I practiced this last night and I'm trying to remember how I did it. That's not right. Forget that. We'll do it down here. Yay! Somebody recognized it. Nike. Okay, what do you think of when you think about Nike? Uh, it's called the swoosh. Nobody knows what a swoosh is, but there it is. That's a swoosh. And you may not know this, but Nike is a Greek word that means victory. So when you see a swoosh, when you see Nike, you associate that with victory. Now, what golfer comes to your mind when you think of the swoosh of Nike? Tiger Woods. You remember that scene? Maybe you didn't see it, but probably one of the greatest golf shots ever made. One shot was one day when Tiger chipped it from off the green and it rolled straight to the hole, paused on the hole, paused on the edge with that Nike swoop right in the middle. It was unbelievable. You would think Nike people set it up. And it just paused there for a second and then dropped in. And so we associate that quite often with Tiger Woods. And we think to ourselves, maybe I'll buy one of those. Because when Tiger has it, they say to him, "You the man." And maybe if I get one, they'll say, "You the man, you the woman." And people are willing to pay a lot of money for a shirt just because it's got a swoosh on it. That's a very compelling logo in our day. Now, believe it or not, the second one is harder for me than that swoosh. And I hope you'll recognize it. It's really kind of simple, but Ronald McDonald, exactly. The arches of McDonald's. Uh, McDonald's, you deserve a break today. This logo tells you this is a sign of abundance. McDonald's, the home of Ronald McDonald, home of the Happy Meal, the meal of great joy. When children see the golden arches, they think of the Happy Meal, they think of the meal of great joy, and they think if I could just have one, I'd be happy. But they're not. It doesn't really make them happy. Uh, but when you see that logo, you think it's a sign of abundance, and our hearts begin to beat faster because you can get this wonderful, delicious, fatty, artery clogging food there. And you can get it cheap. Not as cheap today as it used to be. You can get it in the drive-through so that your family can eat in the van like God meant you to. Uh, and then if your kids are hungry, there are some of you that could go out to your van right now and look between the seats for old French fries and come up with a whole meal because it is the sign of abundance. Now I have one more, and it's harder for me to turn these pages than it is to draw. What is that one? Mercedes Benz. Okay? The Mercedes Benz. It's not the peace symbol. It's not the hippies' refuge. There was a song written about the Mercedes Benz years ago, and it was written in the form of a prayer. You remember this? I'm not going to sing it, I'll just quote it. Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz? My friends all have one. I must make amends. The Mercedes Benz logo, the sign of status. I saw an ad for Mercedes a few years ago that said, "You can't buy happiness, but you can lease it." And then the Mercedes Benz logo came up on the screen. Well, these are the logos. We live in a world of logos. Some of the smartest people in the world stay up late at night trying to dream up one of these logos and figure out a way to make it real clear and real compelling to get you to buy their product. So that when you see that, you might think, I'd like to be associated with what it is that logo stands for. I'd like to be a part of whoever is associated with that deal. I'd like for it to what is reflected in that logo to be expressed in my life. I want to be a part of that. And that brings us to a very important question. Because for over 2,000 years now, the simplest expression of the Christian faith is right behind me on the wall. The cross. That's our logo. That is the simplest expression of the Christian faith. For over 2,000 years, the clearest, most remembered, and most widely recognized symbol of what Christianity stands for is the cross. Two pieces of wood stuck together on which criminals were killed. An instrument of death is our corporate logo. Who would come up with that? What logo, what corporation would come up with that? If you're a follower of Jesus Christ, this is what you have built your life upon. This cross, this logo. And the question screams, why? Why the cross of all things? Just think about it. If you were trying to create a movement that would attract men, women, and children all over the world to be a part of it, why would you choose a cross? Nobody chooses a logo like that in our day. Imagine if XL would choose an electric chair for their logo. the power's always on. It's not going to happen. Think about it. And it concerns me that crosses have become so common that we lose the shock value. That when we see one, we don't think that's what Jesus died on. We don't think of it that way at all. We forget what it really stood for. It's not the sign of a winner, it's the sign of death. It's not a sign of abundance, it's a sign of ultimate loss. It's not a sign of status, it's a sign of ultimate humiliation. One of the most profound mysteries of the Christian faith is that God gave this universe is that He holds all power, all wealth, and He chose as an essential expression of faith, of His heart, of His love, of His character, a cross. And I want you to understand this. Whether you come to the cross personally, whether or not you express your life by the cross, I hope that by the time we leave this room today, I want you to be very clear about the meaning of the cross. I want you to be clear. I want myself to be clear about why it stands at the center of the Christian faith. And so I want to talk about three things: the pain of the cross, the power of the cross, and the people of the cross. First, the pain of the cross. We look at history and how the cross came about. We look at history in Rome and understand the context of the cross. In the ancient world, the Romans knew many ways to execute people, and they used a lot of different ways. They did it a lot. They knew how to do it cheaply. They could burn someone, they could stone someone, and they did. They learned how to do it swiftly with a sword, and they did that. And they learned how to do it privately and quietly. Socrates, for example, was forced to drink hemlock with his friends there with him, a dignified death, so called. So why a crucifixion? Why did they use a cross? Because a crucifixion, let me back up. The cross, using a cross, was much more cumbersome. It was a big deal, and it required a lot of things to go. It was expensive. It took 4 soldiers and a centurion. It took hours for a person to die, sometimes even days for a person to die on the cross. It was much more time consuming. And so why use a crucifixion? They used it when they wanted to do 2 things. They wanted to maximize the pain and make it be drawn out, and they wanted to maximize the humiliation that came with it. I almost hate to mention this, but I think we really need to know. The fine pictures we see of Jesus hanging on the cross with that robe covering him, that's not the way it was. He hung naked on that cross, humiliated. Think of who was at the foot of the cross. The women who followed him, his own mother, were at the foot of the cross, and he hung there naked, humiliated. One reason that they did this is because they were an occupying force, and they wanted to discourage rebellion. And so they used it very often for treason and for insurrection. It was such a cruel way to die that they weren't even allowed to use it on somebody who was a Roman citizen because it was so humiliating. And so I want you to understand what Jesus went through. And I don't know that I can really make it clear, and I don't mean to do a shock kind of thing, but we need to understand what he went through. If you've ever seen the movie, what was the name of it? I can't think of it. The Passion, thank you. If you've ever seen that movie, you get an inkling of it. You get an idea. But he was beaten. quite severely with a whip that had bits of bone in the ends and bits of metal, and the bleeding was so profuse that the centurion had to be very careful not to hit him too many times, or he would bleed to death before they put him on the cross. Uh, the cross beam was then placed on that same back, up on his shoulders, to carry to the place of his execution. They laid the cross on the ground, and they laid him on the cross, and they drove spikes through his wrists and through the arches of both feet. Uh, and they did it, they left a little room so that there was slack, that he would, in order to be able to breathe, he would have to press down on the spike that was in his feet. Excruciating. But to get a breath in, that's what it took. And then, because it was so painful, he had to let himself back down and hang just from his hands. And again, couldn't breathe at that point. And the process just kept going on and on and on. Jesus really did experience this for you and for me. He really did go through that. And while he was going through that is when he said, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." This is our Jesus. This is the one that hung on the cross. Uh, it's kind of interesting that the Gospels say very little about his physical suffering. Mark says simply, "And they crucified him," and they don't go into all that detail. They say a little about that because I think his most significant suffering was not the physical suffering, but it was the spiritual suffering of being cut off from his Father. He experienced a spiritual form of suffering that you and I can only dimly imagine what he went through. That makes the physical suffering almost insignificant. I want to ask you this morning to, as best as you can, to reflect on this. The Bible says that that on the cross, he who knew no sin became sin. He who never experienced guilt, never a moment's shame in his life, never a pang of regret, was pure innocence. Think a moment about the darkest thing that you've ever done in your life. You have something, so do I. We think about that for a minute. The worst thing we've ever done, maybe it was a betrayal of your marriage vows. Maybe it was an abortion. Maybe it was an act of deceit that caused you a job or a friend. Maybe it's a habit or a pattern that you're ashamed of. I don't know what it is, but I know it's there. You have it, I have it, and we remember the pain of whatever that was. You remember how you'd do anything to take it back. And now imagine experience the weight of that sin and those of countless others, some of which your conscience is too dull to even remember or notice. Add to that not just the guilt of your sin, but the guilt, shame, and regret and destructiveness of the soul of every human being that ever lived. Every act of physical abuse, every murder from the beginning of time, every seduction, every betrayal, every deception, every genocide, every Holocaust, every greed-driven business deal, every shabby lie. Imagine of the horror of all of that in one heart. And imagine experiencing and feeling the judgment and the anger of God. And Jesus, who never experienced anything like that, but was perfect and had a perfect relationship, a perfect intimacy with God, with his Father. He had a joy-filled relationship with his Father. He delighted in the Father. He was a servant of his Father. They had love and community throughout all eternity. Never a beginning, never an end. He had never known loneliness. He had never felt unloved. And yet on the cross cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Because of the sin of the world. What would it mean? How would we feel to be wholly and totally forsaken by God? In this world, thankfully, none of us will ever know, because He will never forsake you. He will never leave you. You may know the feeling of being estranged from someone, distant from someone, but you'll never know how it feels to be forsaken by God. Even those who shake their fist at Him, He blesses them every morning with the very breath they take. On the cross, Jesus expressed what we can only dimly imagine, the horror of what it would be like to be abandoned by God, utterly forsaken, complete spiritual darkness, complete spiritual aloneness, abandoned and hopeless. That's why in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus said, my soul is in anguish. I'm sorrowful to the point of death. He was so sorrowful that he thought he would die. The physical suffering is nothing in comparison. He was mistreated by the authorities. He was mocked by crowds, abandoned by his friends, deserted, betrayed. But the real suffering we could only imagine. My God, why have you forsaken me? And this leads us to the second aspect of the cross, the power of the cross. It was apparent to onlookers that what took place when Jesus died was an act of extraordinary power. When he hung on the cross, the land became dark, expressing spiritual darkness, and then the earth shook. The veil in the temple was torn from top to bottom. Now, for those of you that don't know, in the temple was the holy place, and then was the Holy of Holies. And they were separated by a great veil, a curtain, if you will. People could go into the holy place, but only the high priest could go into the Holy of Holies. And he only once a year to atone for the people's sins. And so you had no access to that. Ordinary people, we had no access. But now God is saying, I'm ripping that down. You may come before me. What a powerful thing Jesus did on the cross. Your guilt on the cross, your sin, and the blood of Jesus cleanses it all. And it means whatever you've done, you can be free. You can be washed. You can become like a child. Why? You don't deserve it. I don't deserve it. I'm not good enough. I don't have power within me. But the power of the cross is what takes all that away. The power of Jesus' death on a cross is what takes that away. And so we have the power of access to God. When the veil was ripped, it had been a place of no access, and now we do have access. God says, I want you to have full access. I want you to come to me, God says, at any time. I want you to come to me in the storm, as we were singing about. I want you to come to me in the good times. I want you to dance with me. I want you to shout for joy with me. I want you to be excited with me. I have all of that ready and waiting for each and every one of you. You may come into my presence. There's no more veil. You can be with him. In this world, we don't get access to many powerful people. I'm going to tell you about one that John had. when he was a little boy. I think he was 4, maybe 5, I don't know. For those of you that don't know, John was a little bitty thing when he was young. John was scrawny, a real little guy. And you look at him now and say, how could that be? But he was. And we took him to Disneyland, not Disney World, Disneyland out in California. And when we went through the gate, here comes Mickey Mouse. He's like 6 feet tall. And John had access to him. I guess you call it that. We lost sight of him when Mickey wrapped him up. We also had a time where we were in a restaurant. Again, John was a little bitty guy. And there was a football player on the Dallas Cowboys named Ed Too Tall Jones. Anybody remember him besides me? Yeah, Gene, of course. But Ed Too Tall Jones was in that restaurant. And he saw John, and he came over and picked John up and just held him for a few. I mean, you may think, oh, big deal. I'll tell you, it was a big deal. And Ed Too Tall Jones was a big, big man. And so we had access to him. But we don't get that in this world. We don't have access to the powerful people, and they are just as sinful as you and I are. God is holy. And the sad truth is we've been cut off from him. And on the cross, the veil was ripped, and we now have that access. Come in, he says. Be one of my children and be with me. You ever need wisdom? You have access to it. You ever need guidance? You ever get discouraged and you need comfort? He's there. And he says, you have access to my power. If you're ever lonely and need a friend, God says, come to me anytime. If you're fallen and sin-stained, God says, come to me anytime. Where do I get that power? From the cross. This is the power that God has for you and for me. It's the power of reconciliation. People can be reconciled, not just to God, but to each other. We can be reconciled through the power of the cross. In Jesus' day, the biggest enemies that the Jews had were the Gentiles. And they would crucify each other. They were bitter enemies. They didn't speak to each other. They didn't eat with each other. And Paul said later, after the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, that dividing wall is broken down. And the two can become one through the power of the cross. You can become brothers and sisters. And it happened, and it still happens. Black and white can be together and be one. An estranged husband and wife can come back together and be one. What we discover is that the ground is level at the foot of the cross. There's only one kind of people, those who are loved by God. That's it. Fallen people, redeemed by the death of Jesus Christ on the cross. People get reconciled by the power of the cross. Then we have the power of victory over evil. When Jesus died, he disarmed the spiritual powers and the authorities opposed to God and made a public spectacle of them. This is what they intended for him on the cross, humiliation and shame. But when Jesus died on the cross, showing the ultimate triumph of self-sacrificing love of God and saying any darkness that tries to stand in the way of that will be defeated. Sin and guilt ultimately are defeated on the cross, and that's the power and the victory over sin. Part of what that means is you don't have to be defeated by sin. You can begin to change. You can begin to experience transformation, even in a fallen world. You don't have to be trapped. You don't have to be stuck. Why not? Because of the power of the cross. That's why for over 2,000 years at the center of Christian faith stands not a candle, not a star, but a cross. That's what symbolizes our faith. And that is why Paul says in 1 Corinthians 1:18, for the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. Jesus' main concern is not the display of the cross, but his main desire is that you and I become people of the cross. A primary concern is that of self-giving, self-sacrificial love that is supremely expressed on the cross be publicly displayed in your life. Not by displaying a cross, but displaying the love and the power of God through the cross. In this room, in boardrooms, in living rooms, every room that you can imagine, you and I need to be people of the cross. Jesus said some of the most sobering words ever recorded in human history. Words that have changed more lives than any other words. He said this: if anyone would follow me, they must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. So I've got to ask you, North Lakes, have you chosen to become a people of the cross? Have you told God privately that whenever I get up every day, I'll take up my cross, I'll deny myself, and I'll follow Jesus? Whatever displeases you displeases me. Whatever dishonors you dishonors me. And so I'm going to crucify it. Have you become a man or a woman of the cross? I ask you this morning, North Lakes, will you take up your cross? I don't know what your sin is. Everybody has sin. Lust, pride, deception, resentment, greed. But I want to ask you today, whatever it is, will you nail it to the cross? Will you say, okay, God, whatever it takes, however much it hurts, I'm going to kill it. I'm going to destroy what is inside me that doesn't please you. And I want you to resurrect it so that I might be the kind of person you designed me to be. So whatever I need to do, I'm going to be honest with you. And I'm going to be honest with my brothers and my sisters. I don't know what anybody else in the world is going to do. I don't know the trajectory of their lives, but it is not going to change mine. From this moment on, I will take up the cross. I wonder, will it be said about us that we're a people of the cross? You can go down different roads. You can become a people of wealth, status, power, pleasure, comfort. You can have resources and abilities, gifts, and you can accumulate a lot of the kinds of symbols that say someone has won in this world. Or will you have the courage and the character to say, I'm going to be a man of the cross. I'm going to be a woman of the cross. I'm going to take up my cross daily. I'm going to take it up today. I'm going to seek to live my life with a self-sacrificing, self-giving love. I'm going to mess up, but tomorrow I'll take up the cross again, and the next day, and the next day. And God helping me, I'll be a man of the cross. I'll be a woman of the cross until the end of my life. Would you pray with me, please? Father, help us to be people of the cross. Help us to use the power that you've given us, the power of the cross. Help us to let people around us know that we are a people of the cross and that we stand for Jesus no matter what. Help us each and every day to take up our cross and follow you as completely and as holy as we can. Please forgive us when we fall short. We know we will, but we're going to try. And we're going to try to live for you as a people of the cross. In the name of Jesus, your Son, we pray. Amen.